Hello, and welcome to the Magic Moments podcast with myself, Dan Harvey, and my wife, Kizzy Harvey. In these podcasts, we seek to discuss, debate, and learn about the things that truly matter. These conversations are meant for a mature audience, as is the language. If you have a delicate mentality or sensitive ears, you may be triggered. All views expressed here are our own opinions, even when quoting facts, and we do not expect you to take what is said here at face value. All information should be critically assessed and researched before coming to a final conclusion. Your personal intuition always takes primary importance. And finally, while we encourage debate and discussion in the truth discovery process, being disrespectful or being unreasonably disruptive will not be tolerated. Words are powerful, words can change your life, and once you see, you cannot unsee.
Hello!
Hello!
I've still not got used to doing that.
No, you'd almost press the button to end the stream immediately.
I did nearly
It was
end the stream.
just the intro for everyone there.
Yeah.
That would have been.
Yes. That would have been a funny podcast.
Yes, podcast on anxiety where it's just a disclaimer.
I had so much anxiety, I pressed the wrong button.
You do get anxious about it, funny enough.
Well, yeah. I think it's because I got to lean and... I don't know. I wish
Anxious leaning.
those commands were at the bottom. And I also wish, I don't know. It's just not, it's not made right. That's
It's
the
not
problem.
made right.
It wasn't designed by someone with my brain. Anyway, good evening.
Hello. It's raining outside. Is it raining where you are? If it's raining where you are, type rain so that we know you can hear us.
Yeah,
hear us and see us.
we had to. Am I slouching? We had to come out in the rain, didn't we?
Yes.
Down the garden path.
Right. Today, we are going to be talking about anxiety, and this is going to be part one because this is a really big subject. And when I did this for BU in my group, obviously we do it over a whole month when we used to do it. So I would do 4 or 5 lives, and each one would be an hour themselves. So talking about this, so to condense it into one podcast seemed a bit difficult, and it was a bit difficult.
Yeah, and I need to go to bed. Got a busy day Christmas shopping tomorrow.
Busy day Christmas shopping. So.
I'm also deaf in this ear, so I was just about to tell you all that I can't hear you properly, but none of you speak to me.
It's not audio tight.
I just realised.
Yeah.
Oh.
So that's what we're going to do. We're going to spread it over to...
I forgot to put part 1.
Oh, God.
Do you know what? I thought I'd done it this time. I thought, look, because I've got it on here. I thought I'd mastered everything, but clearly not. So, Gemma's laughing, so I'm guessing that Gemma can hear us.
Gemma can hear us.
Hopefully.
Hello, Gemma. How is Harvey? How is Harvey?
That's not right, is it?
Well, Gemma Harvey, innit? And her son's called Harvey, so it's Harvey.
No. Because of his dad.
Oh, yes. Sorry, yeah. Sorry.
He's in a mischievous mood today. He's played a trick on Hunter and upset Hunter today. Hi, Sue.
Hello, Sue.
Which he banned me from saying, but
he's a pain in the ass. He's a pain in the ass.
Dan is a pain in the ass.
Harvey's a pain in the ass.
No, you're a pain in the ass.
Sorry, I keep calling him that. Just Harvey. I'll have to call him just Harvey to get used to it.
Oh God, you got it about you today. And I'm deaf in one ear.
How are we both? We've recovered from a brief illness in the week.
I am. No.
I've recovered from a brief illness.
Dan's all recovered. If you want to really know how I am, I'm slightly grumpy because I'm on my period. And I'm deaf in one ear. My hearing's gone in this ear. And I'm going Christmas shopping tomorrow. And if
she was a dog, she'd be put down.
I feel sad for myself.
Yeah.
Because I want to feel well. And I've been snotty since September, basically. So, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway.
We're
happy enough.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking.
This isn't my therapy session.
Well, it kind of is, because I am going to ask you some questions about anxiety as an actual experiencer of anxiety yourself.
No, are you going to show some empathy?
Yes, I'm going to show you some empathy. I'm going to ask the questions they might ask you.
because there are going to be people watching with anxiety. There's going to be people who are watching without anxiety, and also people who just know people who've got anxiety. Maybe want to help the people around them who've got it, or understand it better.
No, before you start, so news.
Yes.
I've got new glasses.
Oh, you've got new glasses, have you?
Yeah.
Tell all the people about
I've got more than these, but I didn't bring them all. So which ones do you like better? These ones? But because they're
reminds me of a female Timmy Mallet.
Because they're blue light, like the computer screen goes blue on them because it blocks the blue light.
Yeah, and what about that one?
And then no, these don't because they're not blue light glasses. See, so I think these are better for the podcast. But anyway, and I also bought a steamer, which I was going to show, a handheld steamer in the Black Friday sales. These were Black Friday glasses. You're in such a funny mood, Dan. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
My eyes. If my eyes could just permanently roll, that's what they'd be doing. I know he's in that kind of mood because evening Della, because he was late down there. I'll be down at 20 past 22. I'm like, is he ever turning up? And then I'm like, what do I do? Do I just go live and then?
Well, I thought I'd just have a quick look and just because I wrote this stuff like 3 years ago, so I just thought I'd just check if there's any updates if the science has changed.
What, at 20 past 8?
I thought I'd just scan along and just see if there's anything new that's cropped up in the field of anxiety.
Anyway, that's not what I wanted to say.
Okay.
I wanted to say that we've now set up a link so that people can get notifications. So you can get notified of what the topic is each week. Rather than relying on like a Facebook notification, you can be notified, a reminder about a couple of hours before we're on live, and then you can get the replay directly to you. So if you want that, then pop cabbage in the comments.
Why are you looking at me and saying cabbage?
Well, because we just never decided on a word, did we? Dan said put moo in the comments, which I never really got to the bottom of.
You always use vegetables. I thought I'd go down animal sounds route for a change.
I said put MML because that would be magic moments.
Mel.
And then you went Mel caramel.
Yeah, it doesn't sound right.
So then you said say caramel. Now what do people get if they do a sheep noise then?
Well, I just think any animal noise could be taken, but then because that makes us like we've really got to search the comments. We don't want to miss an animal noise because everyone's going to try and trick us by doing like a rare animal noise. Like, what noise does a squirrel make? Like, no, like you don't know, do you? So if they try and do one like or something, I don't know what it does.
I know what they do.
What?
On their nuts. On their nuts.
On their nuts. What are you on about?
Squirrels,
it's after 9 o'clock. It's
squirrels
fine.
and their nuts. So there's that. So put any animal noise or any food source in the comments, and you may or may not receive the.
Well, normally you say put cabbage, but other vegetables are available, so you could put turnip or something.
Oh yeah, I did used to say cabbage. I forgot that.
You forgot that you always say cabbage.
Cabbage, yeah, I did, yeah.
Every stream, you forgot that.
And also we're on YouTube, so if you could like and subscribe. But also I've got a favour to ask. If you're ever just milling about in silence with your phone near you, please feel free to go onto YouTube, onto Mindset Magic, and play put all our videos on a playlist and just play them continuously. You don't have to listen
in the background.
Them. You don't have to listen to him. You can just mute it.
Turn the sound off. Don't listen to it.
We need 600 him all day. We need 600 hours of viewing before we can like go live and stuff on YouTube and do some things we want to do on YouTube. So if you're
feeling like a helpful person,
or if you're watching TV and your phone's next to you, just put us on. Put the sound down so you can't hear him, and then turn it over so you can't see him.
If you find yourself getting anxiety about the fact that you haven't left us a tip, what you could do is completely free is watch us in the background and just have us on in the background and watch something more interesting, but have it on in the background just so it racks up the hours. That's all you're trying to say, isn't it, Lovey?
That's all I'm trying to say, yeah. So there we go.
Okay.
Now, before we start, no, we are starting now. This was our top requested topic.
Right.
So I did a little poll. I've done various polls over my life. So what have I got? Rude things on my mind.
Wow.
I've done various surveys over the. Maybe it's because it's the time of the month. I don't know. Various surveys over the time of whenever, and anxiety is the top requested thing that people would like support with. So I'd be really interested to know how many people on here either. So if you suffer with anxiety and you're happy to say, please do say, or if you know somebody, then that would be very interesting, and they can do that whilst you start.
Okay. There you go. You've been given a little job. I get loads of little jobs like that too. So, yes, what is anxiety? What are we even talking about? Well, anxiety at its core is a runaway negative anticipation of the future. So, it's a cascading thought process of catastrophizing future events, causing worry, fear, stress, and overthinking. That is what we are actually talking about. So, at its very core, it's basically sitting and worrying about things that haven't happened. So you can imagine all kinds of scary things that may occur, and the likelihood of these things happening might be slim. And that is what you spend too much time doing, causing yourself immense amount of anxiety, worrying about something that may or may not occur, which even if it does occur, you can worry about at the time. And that is fundamentally what we're sort of discussing.
I'd be really interested as well. I know you're covering this a little bit later on, but I'm diagnosed with anxiety, but it comes with actually complex panic disorder. So mine's slightly different. So mine doesn't come out as worry as such, and
Yours is like goes from
future
0
events.
to 100, and there's not much in between.
No.
Whereas this is like anxiety can be just a constant like pressure, if you like.
Yeah, so I'd be really interested if people are happy to share. Now, remember, if you're catching up, you can share too. If you're watching on YouTube, then you can share in those comments. I think that often Dan and I have been doing stuff like this for years and years, and often people actually, and we've seen it just on these few podcasts that we've done, sometimes the support, the help, the little light bulb moments can be coming from the people that are joining in, can't they? And
Yeah,
interacting.
a bit of to and fro. So don't be afraid to say whatever you're happy to share.
Yeah.
So when you become anxious, physical effects begin to manifest. So when you start feeling anxious, when you start doing your anxieties, i.e. thinking of all the horrible things that may or may not be happening, stress hormones are released, such as cortisol, which raises your heart rate, causes sweating, and your prefrontal cortex is shut down, which is the bit at the front, the most modern part of the brain, which then causes you a sort of tunnel vision because you can no longer think creatively. And I would say your ability to rationalize is greatly reduced at this point. And it puts you into a feeling of fight, flight, or freeze. So that's when anxiety is escalating, when it starts to go above the low level hum of, oh, I'm just worrying, I can't sleep, I'm worrying. And it goes to a bit more like, I'm on edge. It only takes one last straw and I'm going to crack sort of thing. That's when it's starting to ramp up. You get into the fight, flight, or freeze situation. And there's Hannah. Hello, Hannah.
Oh, you've missed it all, Han. We haven't missed it all. You've missed him. He's on one tonight. I don't know. You have to go back, watch him at the beginning.
Yes. Delia says, mine is more...
Della. You said you're not reading the comments because you're blind. Della says, mine is more of a phobia, but gives me anxiety, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Is that a specific phobia, like a phobia of something or a social phobia? I mean, obviously don't share if you don't want to. But yeah, just curious about unpicking that a little bit. So I wrote when you were talking then, and then you kind of said it with the rationalization. I think that a lot, and certainly this was for me because I never thought that I'd be somebody that would suffer from anxiety. I'm not an over worrier, am I?
No.
Like, I'm not a stressy person. I'm not.
No, it was a bit of a surprise when you got when you were diagnosed with it,
Yeah.
and when it happened to you, really.
And so, and what I thought I could do was think my way out of it.
Right.
Because I thought I could overcome it by, like, I don't know,
Almost like a willpower.
Yeah, like trying to overcome it. And so I think that that's really helpful. Like, once I realized that I couldn't, that it wasn't that me that was faulty. It's not that there's something wrong with me. I should be stronger mentally. I should be, I should do this, that, or the other. And I actually think, controversial, and I'm happy if people have had different experiences, but some of the tasks out there that they tell you to do for anxiety, I think that they should come with a little disclaimer, because I think some of them, you need to do it like before, not before the anxiety starts, but right at the beginning. Otherwise, you can't. They don't help.
Yeah, I think that the thing. So a lot of the preventative stuff, which we're going to cover mostly in the second half next week, but a lot of the preventative stuff, the stuff that you can do to control or manage anxiety, is the stuff you need to do right at the beginning before it escalates. And what the problem for you is, yours tends to be 0 or 100. There is not much in the middle. You seem to like go straight from I'm okay to, oh my God, I'm struggling, and then panic attack.
Yeah. So I think because mine's linked with trauma and PTSD, I think that, there's no build up. There's just, it literally just,
so
yeah.
You have to be really conscious of where your anxiety level is, which in itself will cause anxiety if you're constantly thinking and monitoring, where's my anxiety at? Because that's not a normal thing that most people would be doing, right? No,
Yeah.
I don't suffer with anxiety. I mean, no more than anyone else, sort of thing. Like, I would say I'm pretty standard anxiety level for whatever the average person is supposed to be. But you're and I would say that for you, because as I say, like, yours is triggered by trauma. But for me, I don't ever sit there and like think about where's my anxiety level at. So it's hard to be conscious of where that is, and therefore to catch it in time to do something about it, because you're already so long before you notice, you're already so far along the anxiety route that you may be past the point of being able to control it. However, we will provide all the different ways they suggest, but I think it's a bit like anything else, whereby depending on what you're like as a human being, certain things are going to work for you and certain things won't. So it might be a case of, like, you might have to try 10 different types of anxiety management techniques, and only one of them might work for you because it's just the way you are, sort of thing. That's just your personality or whatever.
Hi, Aggie. I was so poorly with this that I tried a lot of things, from the woo-woo, crystals, not that I particularly think crystals are woo-woo, but you could say that.
Well, a lot of people think they are woo-woo.
Yeah, to the scientific stuff. And so I've got a couple of things that I want to leave you with today, because I don't want to leave anybody, if people are struggling, I want to give them something today, but the bulk of it will be on part 2.
Yes.
And I've got a lot that I can personally go through.
That you've tried yourself personally.
I've tried myself personally.
Yeah. So tried and tested.
But that doesn't make it like, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for you. What Dan just said then triggered a thought in my head about, trying 10 different things or whatever. Actually, these podcasts, they're going to build upon each other. And I think that the best thing you can do in life is build your own toolkit of things.
Yes.
That for each little bit of thing that we're talking, at some point we'll talk about increasing confidence. At some point we'll talk about
overwhelm.
We'll talk about mind monkeys. And I think it's just a case of, because I think what I've certainly done is tried something and then either not tried it for long enough, which is famous thing I do, or I do really try it, and then because that doesn't work, I just bin off the whole of like
all the other things.
Yeah. And so I would just say to you that personal growth, it really is like that, finding the things and continually finding the things.
Yeah.
Mine started after losing my mum. Yeah, Aggie, so did mine actually. actually now, and something for you to consider, to think upon. So my mum's death was very traumatic, and her grief very difficult because of how close we are. However, I do truly believe that it's because I have past trauma. And there's a great book called Body Keeps the Score. It's quite heavy in the sense that there's quite a lot of, it basically follows a guy's career through psychology. But that gave me a real understanding that this anxiety was, because I got annoyed really that, after that it came on from my mum's death, because I felt like, I can do this. Like, grief is a natural part of life, however difficult it is, however sad it is. Like, I can be sad and I can live, but I couldn't live with this anxiety. So possibly, I don't know, Aggie, it might be the sense of it triggered something that's previous as well. But anyway, carry on. Sorry.
No, that's fine. That's the whole point of what we're doing there.
Did you know that you didn't say this bit? I didn't know if you on purpose.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, just checking.
I was actually going to say it next.
Okay.
So I think it's important when we're talking about this, and this is, I think, Eckhart Tolle quote: "You are not your mind; you are the awareness behind it. So become the observer." So, and then this is something we sort of talk about on the ego stuff as well. So you are not your mind, right? Your mind is in your head, right? But you are the awareness behind your mind. So you are the person who is listening to the person in your mind, if you like. And so creating that separation and disconnect for someone who's not ever had that disconnect might be a bit scary, but it is extremely helpful for anxiety because it puts a barrier and it separates anxiety from you. It's not you that's anxious, it's your mind that is anxious. And then having that difference between it's not you that's anxious, it's your mind, means that sometimes for some people, not for everyone, but for some people, you can start to deal with it in a different way because it's almost like I'm trying to fix something that's slightly going wrong here or something that's getting out of hand, rather than I'm panicking and I'm getting out of hand and there's trouble with me. It's trouble with something. And I think I just think it takes in my mind at least, it takes the edge off it and it puts a separation between you and it. So just something to consider and think about and ponder for a little while, and maybe that will help or not. Go on.
That will really come as well into its own when we do My Monkeys.
Yes.
And things like that. And all those kind of thought patterns, negative thought patterns. So there's a book by Michael somebody called Untethered Soul. So I wrote down soul because I couldn't remember the untethered bit. And then you said something about it being scary if you've never, something about the disconnect.
Yeah.
And so that's what he named the book, Untethered Soul. And it basically goes through and makes you really explore and realize. So like, so you say something in your head. So if you say something right now, like if I say hello Kizzy in my head, like who's listening to that?
Yeah.
It's a bit of a mind-bending book, but I think it's quite fundamental.
To me, I always just think of it as I'm a soul wearing a meat suit. So the meat suit has got its brain and likes to do a lot of thinking, too much thinking for my liking, I gotta say. But that's what my meat suit likes to do. But I'm the soul in the meat suit, and there is a difference between the two, a big difference. And any mental issues or any physical issues are to do with the body which you require to live here, but it's to do with the body and it's not to do with you. And it is important. I don't know, I just feel like it's an important separation.
You know those robots in the Matrix where they're like
Pinocchio.
And
go on, sorry, go on.
So I thought that was a really good I see. But anyway, right. And then they've got the big things and they're sat in them, in the fight thing when all the things are coming through the
knuckle up. That's what they say. They're in the shooting the mechs, the men in the mechs shooting the.
Yeah. So those machine things, right? Imagine if like you had a bubble around you.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, and then so if the alarm starts going off on the machine, like going, oh, I don't like this, I'm being shot at. Like that's the machine, isn't it? Not
That's the
you.
machine's problem.
That's the machine.
That sounds like a machine issue.
Yeah, so I might think of myself as one of them.
Yeah. Well, for you, it'd be, that sounds like a meat issue. Rather than a soul problem. Nothing to worry about.
Nothing to worry about. It's just my meat.
It's just
my
your
meat.
meat.
My meat's having an off day.
This is an in-joke, right? Because when we went to Turkey like 10 years ago on holiday, she hurt herself. Because on every holiday, she always hurts herself and we have to go to the local hospital. So we've done a big tour of European hospitals. Anyway, we was in Turkey and she went to the hospital there. And we got it all back on insurance. It's fine. We were second hands at doing this. Anyway, while we was there, the doctor said, "Oh, you've got a meat infection because she'd hurt. Was it finger?
No, my toe.
No, toe. Yeah, you'd hurt your toe and it had gone really red and sore. And he said you had a meat infection. And
That's
we just
what they
thought it was
wrote
funny.
on the paperwork.
Yeah, meat infection.
I
yeah.
had to claim back off the insurance for my meat infection.
Yeah. So for some reason, meat is now a comedy word.
So that Turkish guy knew what he's on about, though.
Yeah,
That doctor.
he knew.
It's a meat problem. It's not a soul problem.
He knew.
Your soul's still on holiday.
Yes.
Right.
So, try not to judge anxiety because it's not an illness. It is a state of being. I put the word stage there on my text. Have you noticed that?
Do you know, I corrected quite a lot of things today, but I missed that. I thought you meant stage.
No, it's an illness, not a state of being, not stage of being.
Okay.
I
thought it meant like you're going through a stage.
No, as in, so anxiety is a state.
I get you now.
State of you're in a certain state, a certain mind state, if you like.
Yeah, like if my
yes,
like got...
so
okay.
Its purpose is to protect you, right? That's the purpose of having anxiety, believe it or not. Originally from wild animals or their dangers, it can prevent you from entering into dangerous situations. So it's not all bad, right? So rather than just judging it, oh, I've got bad anxiety, anxiety's terrible, and what's even the point of anxiety? The problem is runaway anxiety with little basis in actual factual danger. That's the issue that we're talking about, rather than the fact that you have anxiety. Everyone has anxiety, so we're only talking about kind of like the dimmer switch metaphor I always like to use. Everything is like a dimmer switch, really. Anxiety is turned up or down. Everyone has it to a certain degree, and a certain amount is healthy because it prevents you doing crazy things. Like having a certain amount of anxiety allows you to think forward into the future and, if used properly, avoid dangers and problems that might occur because you're thinking correctly in some cases that there might be dangers or things that are going to threaten you, right? So it's perfectly reasonable to have anxiety. The problem is runaway anxiety that doesn't have any kind of basis in fact and causes you, therefore, all these kinds of issues, which are then medical issues. If you're having all these stuff like with what Kizzy has, where it goes to the point of a panic attack, and then we have to call the ambulance and stuff.
So 6 in 100 people are diagnosed with anxiety every week.
Wow.
8 million people in the UK are currently registered, diagnosed, whatever you want to call it, as having anxiety.
A lot.
Yeah. Out of those 8 million, only 50% access any kind of support or help.
Mm.
So another reason really why this live is so important, and why we want to do it. But what I would say is I was just thinking about those stats, and I was thinking about what you said about how it's natural, like anxiety is there to help us, and there can be a sense of embracing that a little bit. And I don't know what you think about this, but obviously anxiety is on the increase massively. Do you think it is because of the switched on world that we live in, where we're, or we've got access to everything on our mobile phones? There's always some form of media coming at us, whether it be through a news feed, through a radio, through a TV.
Well, look, I mean, okay, let's do this, right? We're going to imagine something 20 years ago, and then we're going to imagine something 40 years ago, right? And we're going to imagine it today, right? Three stages, right? So today, let's just say there's a knife attack somewhere, or a bomb attack, or some kind of terrorism wherever it is, right? Now, today, what happens is that's all over everything on social media. That's all over the news. It's in every newspaper. It's everyone. You go into work, they're talking about it. They've seen it. It's all over the internet. So anything you go on the internet, it's all over there. And if you're using your phone a lot, you're on it. You're going to see it multiple times, right? So that's what happens today. Let's go back 10 years, just before smartphones. We might have to go back 12 or 13, might have to cheat a bit. Just before smartphones, right? Take smartphones and social media out of the equation. And all of a sudden, you've got a big layer missing. And now you're probably more likely to be watching the TV to find this kind of stuff out. So you might hear it in the morning, then the afternoon, maybe at tea time, right? You're going to get a level down in getting this information. Now go back to 1990 or wherever we are now. 1990 is no mobile phones at all, right? So you're more likely to be hearing this on the radio, in the car. You might hear this on the news at the night time. Why, if you went back another 30 years or so before TV or before, like, you would have only have known local news back in the day. Things would have been happening all the time, but you would never have heard about it. You would only hear about local things or really big worldwide events, right? So it's because of the amount of plug-in that we have to all these technologies, and I'm not saying these technologies are necessarily bad, but it's how we use them, right? So we're just having this access and bombardment to all kinds of scary things, triggers, so many triggers for anyone who already has trauma, or who already is slightly more anxious than the average, or is naturally predisposed to worry and concern and fear, right? Of which there are many people. And 30% of people who have anxiety or generalized anxiety disorder, GAD, 30% of those are also depressive people, as in clinically depressed, right? So there's a crossover there too. So if you think about that, we're bombarded with all these triggers and potential flashpoints that is going to create or raise anxiety. So if you're constantly being sort of almost attacked, might even feel like attack, especially over recent years with COVID and all that stuff, right? We're literally being imprisoned in your house.
For your nervous system, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
I'm just thinking of, like, if you've
absolutely.
if you've had trauma in the past, then, like, yeah, it's not going to take much to trigger you into fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're basically being put on edge all the time.
Yeah.
And what is happening is you don't realize it because you're just reading this material, right? And you think you're right, but your body's reacting to everything because the body is constantly running. I call them simulations, right? And sometimes some people are conscious they're doing these simulations. Some people it's in the subconscious. These are being run. So we've all been told about a terror attack. In your back of your mind, that's playing, right? But your body doesn't know the difference between imagination and truth. So your body reacts physically to everything you think about.
We did that in the first episode, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Where we did the lemon.
Absolutely. So your body is having a cortisol shot, an adrenaline shot. Its heart rate is going up. You're feeling stressed with no real reason why. Like, you don't really know why, because this is happening in your subconscious. You're being bombarded. This is done in programming. We talked about it in programming episode, where all this fear is washing through your body, physically washing through your body, chemically washing through your body, and you're reacting to it and then thinking, well, hang on a minute, I'm on edge. But why am I on edge? I need to calm myself down. I'll take a pill, or I'll do this, or I'll drink this, or I'll eat this, and I'll calm down. I'll have some alcohol or whatever. That'll calm me down. That'll calm my nerves. People are always trying to calm the nerves. Why? What's wrong with your nerves? Like, there must be reasons why. Things don't happen for no reason. They happen for some reason. So it's only a case of understanding the reason. So if we're talking about anxiety and we've got all these triggers going on, then the only solution, if this is triggering you, must be to reduce the amount of contact you have with it as best you can. I'm not saying that's an easy thing to do, but
no, and I don't think it's just, news. I mean, that was a really good example, and I was thinking then, nowadays most people open their eyes and are on their mobile phone. So
probably the worst thing you can do, I would say.
The first thing that you can see is something that could. And so when I was diagnosed with depression and PTSD back when I was when I had a breakdown when I was 19 and a half.
Yeah.
What I couldn't understand, wasn't it, is it happened a fair amount of time after the situation that had happened, and so I couldn't understand. So I said to the woman, I don't really know why I'm here, because the reason I ended up there was because I couldn't get my hair right. Like, that is what led for me to have a proper TV moment breakdown where Dan had to slap me around the chops to like get me, it was a proper TV moment. And she said that your brain's like a bucket, basically, and that, and so she asked me about traumatic things and things that had happened in my life, and she just started drawing, and she just basically said, like, you just get to the top in the end and then it overspills, and that's depression. But it just made me think about anxiety. It made me think, if that works sort of in the same way on your nervous system, so like you wake up and you scroll on your phone and you see something that is not nice. It doesn't have to be a massive news story. It
No.
can just be
Stress,
anything.
just stressful.
Yeah, like that's like room, isn't it? Like that's a little bit in there, like filling that up. And then, you go downstairs and I don't know, like, because we got so much going on and so much around us, it can be thinking like, oh my God, I haven't done Elf on the Shelf, or, oh, everyone's got their Christmas tree up and I've not got my Christmas tree up yet. So there's also that, isn't there, where we're just seeing what other people are doing. Whereas, of course, back in my nan's day, she wouldn't have a clue what people were doing in the morning. She knew what she was doing.
Yeah. You didn't know what every single one of your people on your profile were doing, and then feeling it in some way inferior, or like you should be doing X, Y, or Z because they're doing it. Or
and then like Hunter comes down and then he does something, and then I might be like, oh, I must remember this and this, or I'll be judged for it. Whereas back in the day, kids went to school.
Is a simpler life.
Yeah.
Basically is what it is. There's so much, everyone's bandwidth is being exceeded. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
Because there's so much happening these days. There's so much happening concurrently that human beings we're not designed for the life that we live today.
No.
And so that's why there's burnout. And it makes sense to me perfectly why there would be burnout.
Right.
And I also think of it like this. So you have your nervous system, right? And you have your adrenal system. Now, when you have with your adrenal system, when you get really stressed out, the amount of, let's call them, for making it easy, negative hormones which are released and chemicals which are released into your system, that increases, right? Now, that level is really easy to rise, but it's really hard to reduce. So once you've raised it, once you've had all the fear porn all day long, and your level's got up to here, it doesn't come back down again. Okay, it takes a very long time of its natural self to just sink slowly down, but you don't ever get that length of time to recover. The next thing pushes the bar up, and then the next thing. And what this is doing is causing adrenal fatigue, which is an actual medical condition that you can go and look it up, which you've got. So many people have been adrenally fatigued, right? All I ever hear is everyone saying how fatigued they are, how tired they are, how burnt out they are, and how some people are struggling to get out of bed. Research adrenal fatigue and find out why, because that is one of the reasons that it could be. That is the physiological burnout of a human being through chronic stress and anxiety. All these things are all sort of linked to each other. That you take away, you can't really take stress out of anxiety. They're sort of like paired together. But you've also got depression, as I told you, 30% of people who are out of the anxiety people are also depression people. So there's a lot of crossover between all these issues, and these have physical and in some cases permanent effects on your body, which you can't ignore.
So adrenal fatigue, we tried for years, didn't we? And that was a big part of, there's certain supplements that I've taken because you almost can't do the other stuff without starting there, can you?
Yeah, you need, I think it was iodine. I think it was. You get it from seaweed. It comes out of seaweed. That is. So at the same time as the nutritional value of food is at its all-time low, right? In general, if you buy it from anywhere and don't grow it yourself, at an all-time low of nutritional value in food, you're being depleted due to stress and chronic worry and fear and all the rest of it. you're being depleted, constantly bombarded from media and all other sources. And so you're being squeezed both ends. And guess what? People are going to snap one way or another. Some people snap, they have anxiety and panic attacks. Some people snap through depression. There's all kinds of different ways. But human beings aren't supposed to live in the way that we live.
What do you think then? 6 in 100 people every week diagnosed with anxiety makes a lot of sense. Now we've talked through all of that, and actually I've had a few light bulb moments about things that I'm doing that I didn't realize why I was doing them, but now it makes sense because it's helping me. Anyway, that's a whole nother thing. But so that leaves 94 people that are okay.
Well, yeah, not with anxiety, put it that way.
Yeah. So what do you know, and you don't suffer with anxiety, although I do think you had adrenal fatigue after some of our joint trauma. But what do you think is different? Like, if they got something different in their life, like are they doing something? Have they got something in their life? Do you think, or like, I don't know. I don't know. I'm quite trying to say.
I think let's put numbers on it. Maybe that'll make it clear, right? I'm just making these numbers up, but let's just put some numbers on it, right? Imagine you've got one person born, and their bandwidth for dealing with stress and anxiety is 40. Another person's born and theirs is 60, just naturally the way they are. Right? Another person might be born, theirs is 100. They're really lucky. They're like just so chill, and it's really hard to stress them out.
And also, I guess, for example, with you haven't got any childhood trauma.
No.
So if everyone's bandwidth happened to actually be the same, then you could chop it up as the timeline went on. Yeah. And in all fairness, your timeline's been okay until you met me.
Yes, then I became highly stressed and aged 20 years within 5 years. But anyway, that's a side point. But what can happen is you might be born with your level, right? So let's just take the person who's born with a level of 60, right? Well, the person who's living at level of 40 might, let's just say they have a sweet life and nothing ever stressful happens, right? Highly unlikely. But let's just say they're super lucky, nothing happens. They never hit their bandwidth. Even though their bandwidth is low, they never hit it because it's 40 and nothing's happened to them. But the person who's at 60 or higher, they might have a really stressful life. So even though they've got more bandwidth, they might still snap. They go beyond their limit. And so I just think that it's partly dependent on who you are as a human being, as your personality just happens to be, which is partly to do with you and partly to do with who you surround yourself most with, especially at childhood, which you don't have much choice over as a child. And it's partly to do with what happens to you. So it's nature and nurture. It's both. And each will play a part on you. And that determines whether or not it's going to happen to you. So it's not like there's no judgment on it. Like, I just don't see, it's not a judgment. I know some people feel really judged. They don't want to say they've got anxiety because they feel like it's a weakness or, there's some kind of taboo on it or something. I don't think there is these days, but there always used to be a taboo on that sort of thing back in the day. But I don't think there is now. I don't know.
With men still, I think.
Yeah, with men there is, for sure. There is on men's side, for sure.
I think women, because we're more open anyway. I don't.
Yes,
but I do think people still feel shame. I felt shame. I felt embarrassed because I felt
you thought it as a personal weakness of you or fault.
Yeah, I thought I wasn't strong. I thought I wasn't strong enough. I thought I was.
Well, if anyone's watching and you want to comment, if you're watching on catch up, it doesn't matter. But just comment. Have you had anxiety and felt shame or felt like something along those lines of embarrassment, or you can't say because you think it's viewed negatively?
So I don't know if Hannah's still watching, but we were away like this time last year, just gone, and I had to sit in the pub and do a jigsaw on my phone because I was getting to the real height of my anxiety then. To just stay in the room, because I don't know, I always felt like I was going to die, which
Yes, that's what happens to you, isn't it? You think you're going to die.
I get to and I felt so. And these people love me, and I know they love me, and I know they don't care, and they didn't judge me. I didn't feel judged or any of that, but I felt stupid.
Right.
Like, but that was all on me, nothing on
Mm.
them, because, you know, I'm sat with safe people in a safe place and we're having a lovely meal and I have to ignore them. I said to them, I am listening, because I felt so rude, because I don't ever have my phone out like that. Like, I'm, you know, again, no judgment. People do what they want to do, but that's my choice. And yeah, it was so yeah, that's how I felt. Della says, if I ever tell people that I suffer of anxiety, people are always shocked. So I tend to hide it or laugh it off. That's a really good point, actually. I think as well, if people don't have it, they have a perception of it.
Yeah.
And they think that so then you, if you're not being that way, then you must be all right, or you must be exaggerating, or
Yeah, if you'd have asked me in my 20s about anxiety, I'd have thought of it. This is the honest truth. I would have thought of it as like some kind of like, I don't want to say weakness, but some kind of like mental frailty or something. Like, I don't know, like you'd be some way delicate,
yeah,
like a
like,
delicate mentality,
you know,
delicate person.
some of the people that live on their nerves, you know, those type of
Yes, like nervous people.
women.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm going to
nervous
use
people.
women, like, yeah.
Yeah, you used to get that stereotype in old like TV shows and that from the 70s and 80s. There'd be like a really nervous woman stereotype there who was like fussing around and like really busy person. Like
that woman in Hyacinth Bouquet who can't
yeah,
hold the teacup.
yeah,
Forgot her name.
yeah. I know what you mean. I can't remember her name.
Yeah, like that kind of.
Yes, like
yeah,
that.
Yeah. And that's the thing. So I think I know Della. This is Della's lovely ring, by the way, for those of you that, well, no, it's not Della's, it's mine now. But I got it from Della. Anyway, so yeah, Della, if you were to meet her, is warm and bubbly and, you know, just one of those like lovely souls. And so yeah, I can see exactly what you mean, because I get it as well, because people just think that I'm like confident and
Yeah, like not like if you've got all these traits, you can't have anxiety or stress or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing that I wrote down was that, do you remember, and I don't remember if it's Switzerland or Sweden, but I'm sure it's one of them, one of the SWAs, they invest 80% of their budget in children. And so they have hardly any prisons and they have hardly any mental health issues, because they pour everything at the start of a child's life. And it just made me think, when I asked you that question about why do some people get anxiety, some people don't, it made me think about how, you know, about this trauma thing and about things that can happen. Now in Switzerland or Sweden, wherever it is, they are pouring everything to make sure that children are coming out well educated and with their mental health intact and know how to regulate themselves and know all of that stuff. And then they don't have any mental health, very few mental health issues.
It severely reduces all of the negative aspects of society today.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that is a really good idea, because at the end of the day, the deeper and earlier you invest in a child, then the more benefit you get. Because obviously, you know, if you do something at the age of 80, it has almost no effect versus if you do it at the age of 8 or the age of 2 or something. So it makes sense.
And I just think you said earlier about how you turn to things like, oh, I'll have something to eat, I'll have something to drink or whatever. And that's because so many of us are not taught how to regulate our nervous systems. We learn how to regulate our nervous systems as children in the wrong way. And so I think that's another thing that you could look into, and we'll cover it on the next one, is as adults, you know, it's important that we know how to calm our nervous system down.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
things about our nervous system.
Yeah. So there are two core pathways to anxiety. The first is in the cortex, which is that cortex has come up again, front of the brain, new bit, which is the thinking side. And the second is the amygdala, or the physical or the automatic response. So you can get anxiety through thinking, you can be triggered through thinking, that pathway, or you can be physically triggered into an anxiety response, right? So if you ever had that thing where you're crossing the road and you go to step out and you see a car in the last second out your side vision and it almost runs you over, and you have that shock and panic and you have that horrible feeling, and you have a blast of cortisol, a blast of adrenaline, and your anxiety goes through the roof and you like might even be a bit shaky, it's a near miss, right? Well, that is a physical anxiety, right? So that is the one that came first, before the new bit of thinking yourself into anxiety. So someone's made a comment.
Yeah, don't you read it?
Oh, sorry, go on then.
Because you can't read them.
Okay.
Need your specs. Laura said, how do we know if we have cause for genuine anxiety or if it's our anxiety in overdrive?
Well, that's down to the individual. I don't know. It would be impossible to say right now for everyone what they would or not be anxious about. Like, I guess it's about, so if you're sitting there and you're thinking about stuff that is highly unrealistic, like I'm really worried that let's make it obvious, right? I'm really worried that if I leave my house and Tiger's going to eat me, right? I'm really anxious about that. That's highly unlikely to happen. So you can put odds on that. I'm not saying you have to physically, 100 to 1 or whatever, but I mean, you can think that's highly unlikely, right? However, you might think I'm going to step out the door and I might get run over. Much more likely than being eaten by a tiger. Still unlikely, because how often do you get run over? So
hopefully never.
So it's still so really, when you're having these thoughts, and we're going to cover this more next week because this is a two-parter. Next week we'll talk about all this kind of thing a bit more, but basically it's about thinking how likely is what I'm actually worried about, what I'm having anxiety about, how likely is that to actually happen to me? Has it happened before? If it's happened before, how many times versus how old am I? Like, what is the odds? And not worrying about things. Ultimately, if something does happen, it's going to happen whether you have anxiety about it or not. And so worry about it at the time. You don't want that times to your worry and stress if it's not going to happen.
So there's so CBT techniques there are for this,
which we're going to talk about next week.
That
for sure.
But if it was me, what I would do is I would write down. So, like, say I was having anxiety about. So let's just do something I've done recently. So anxiety about traveling to Spain, right? So you take that anxiety that you have, right, whatever the thing is, and I would look about, so what am I worried about? Like, unpick it. Like, what are the things? So, like, plane crashing, then I can see that that's highly unlikely, all of that kind of stuff. Blah, blah, being too hot. Well, that's okay. I can do things that manage that. What I would also look at, because it might not be something as specific as that, is I would look at, so say it was more of a thought of like, is Dan going to be, I'm worried Dan's going to be upset with me because I talked too much today on the podcast. So when we go back to the house, he's going to be upset. So say I had that thought, then why is that making you laugh?
As if
I could ever talk too much. I know.
I'd be permanently upset if I was worried about you talking too much, wouldn't I? I would never recover.
But anyway,
yeah.
So I would also think what's come before that. Like, because sometimes it's not this that's the problem. It's because I'm tired. I'm on my period. Dan made a comment and it's actually the comment that's upset me. So in a nutshell, unpick it. Like unpick it. If you want to really know, so if you're having anxiety about specific things and you want to really know, is this anxiety in overdrive or is this just my, is my amygdala just triggered? Then try and unpick it.
Agree.
That's what I would say.
So GAD, as we talked about, is generalized anxiety disorder. The components of GAD are chronic worry, which is the physical. Sorry, chronic worry, and the physical, which is the feeling and you can't relax, right? You've also got the behavioral, which is avoidance and seeking reassurance, right? So you've got physical, which is the feeling tense part, which we're going to cover mostly next week. There's things you can do for physical things to prevent anxiety and manage it. The behavioral side, the avoidance and seeking reassurance, we're also going to cover mostly next week. We'll do it a little bit now as well. And the thinking, there's the chronic worry, which is what most people associate it with. That is the one that is most common, and that is what most people think.
I'd be interested to hear in the comments for those that, is that what they feel their struggle with anxiety mostly is. Is it over worrying about specific things?
And Della's put, yes, that does work for what you said.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the thought. I'm just going to do a brief mention of each one. So on thought, so from the thought side, from the thinking side of anxiety, these are what I've called thought errors, right, if you like. So this is what people tend to do. They overestimate the probability that a negative event is going to happen, and they overestimate the severity of that negative event, right? So let's say it's a social event and you're going somewhere, right? And you're thinking about that and worrying about it and getting anxiety, okay? So you're thinking that if I go there, I'm going to make a tit of myself. Everyone's going to hate me there. Whatever the issues are for you going there, right? You're going to start thinking of all the actual worst things that people might do or think, right? Even though, most people are mostly concerned about themselves rather than you. But that's what you're thinking. Then you're going to overestimate the severity of what actually is going to happen there. So you're going to think, right, when I get there, someone's going to say, oh, they don't want me there, that I'm not welcome or something. Or everyone's just going to ignore me. I'm going to be on my own. I'll be in the corner on my own. It's going to be horrible. I'm going to feel horrible. I'm going to look like an absolute idiot. So you'll start doing all those kind of things, right? Now, what I would say is, if you actually avoid going there to the social event, then you can then reaffirm that anxiety by avoiding it. Because what you're doing by avoiding it is saying, "Oh, that was a close one. Oh, I escaped doing that. See, look, I feel all right now. Now I'm not going. The anxiety's going down." So you kind of like reinforcing a negative behavior based on pure imagination. If you So the best thing to do, and we're going to cover this in more depth, but the best thing to do is to actually go to the social event, even if it's terrible, because first of all, even if it is bad, as in you don't enjoy it, let's say, it's never going to be as bad as what you've made out it's going to be in your mind. So you're going to it's going to be a bit of a, oh, this is all right, or this is not great, I'll go home early, or you might actually, shocker, you might enjoy yourself, you might actually be good. I'm a social avoider, so I know from experience what I'm talking about in this particular regard. Sometimes you actually just enjoy it, and it's nowhere near it's anything like what you think it is. And so then the next time you have anxiety about the social thing, I'm just using this as an example, then it hasn't got the same power because it's wrong in your own mind. You've got factual evidence and proof that actually what you're talking about is nonsense, and you're just catastrophizing, and you need to calm down. And sometimes you just got to throw yourself into it.
And what your brain does, going back to that lemon example, is that so you're sat there catastrophizing about this event, and then your brain doesn't know that that's not real. So that thinks that that's happening. So you get the cortisol release, a bit like if you think about sniffing a lemon, licking a lemon, you get the saliva release, and then you don't go, and then your anxiety decreases. So then your brain is like, oh yeah, we were right to be worried about that. Then what it does is, so just using the lemon example, when you come across a lime that looks like a lemon, your brain goes, oh, that's probably not safe. So this is how things escalate with anxiety, because it can start very small, like going to do the school run. You're anxious about going to do the school run. And then before you know it, you can't step inside Sainsbury's. And then before you know it, you're not going on anything social.
You're not leaving the house.
Even though it's things that you would enjoy.
Ultimately, it gets to that point.
And that's because at some point, your brain doesn't know the difference, and you've probably avoided something, and then it's gone, yeah, look at that. And then what it does is superimposes those criteria on other things, going, well, that's probably like that,
Mm.
and that's probably like that.
9 times out of 10, the answer to any phobia or any of these kind of like, let's call them mental issues, is to do the thing you're scared of the most. Whatever that is, just do it. That is 9 times out of 10 the answer to it. And 9 times out of 10, it's not as bad as what you think it's going to be. So that was the thought mentioned. The behavior mentioned on this is behavior manifests in two main ways, which is avoidance and seeking reassurance, right? So with avoidance, you avoid anything that you feel will make you feel anxious. So like the social event that I mentioned, or any situation. By avoiding, you reinforce your anxiety and it encourages you to imagine the disasters that you avoided. Okay, like we mentioned. Reassurance manifests as things like being overprotective with your kids, right? Constantly checking with a partner or loved one, as in texting them or phoning them all the time to check on them, because that turns into a form of control when you do that. And you're doing it for their protection in your mind, right? I'm worried about them, right? I'm worried about their safety or their health or whatever. So you think I'm doing it for their protection due to some kind of imagined stress or upset or anxiety. So what you're trying to do is protect yourself by controlling them. So by controlling them, by constantly checking on them, by constantly asking what they're up to and what they're doing, that prevents you from having anxiety if you know what they're doing and they're safe, right? But that level of control causes the other person anxiety that you're doing it to, which then, if you're in any way empathetic, you'll pick up on, and then that will cause you anxiety anyway. So the whole thing's illogical. But I would say that from my perspective because I don't have anxiety, but that's how it appears from the outside. So Della says she's an avoidance queen. So she's royalty.
Laura said that sounds narcissistic.
What bit? What, the control thing? No, the two are. I don't think the two are related. No, it doesn't come from that place. So narcissism comes from a completely different place from where this comes from. This control is first of all, it's mostly not conscious control; it's subconscious, and secondly, it's a manifestation to protect themselves. It's a form of them protecting themselves. Right? The only way they can deal with that loved one being out of their sight is if they're in almost constant communication. Right? So it's just that constant reassurance requirement. That's my opinion on that.
Yeah, I don't know, because we're not like that, are we?
No, we're the opposite of that. Like we if anything, we don't check enough on each other.
We forget each other. Yeah.
She goes on holiday, and it's like 3 days later. I'm like, oh, she hasn't texted me. Oh, I better check on her.
Yeah.
More like that for us, but
narcissism. I mean, yes, of course, narcissists can be controlling. I mean, there's a definite crossover. We'll talk about narcissisms. That'll be narcissists. That'll be a whole episode. That I think a lot of narcissism comes from trauma. Anyway.
Yes.
That it creates narcissists.
Della says it's the feeling of being out of control that gets her. Yeah, I mean, I do think there's for a lot of people there is a link between control and anxiety, and there's people we know in our life that have that issue.
Well, and I'm not controlling of you, but
not at all, no.
But I there's nowhere on this earth I would let you sort all the stuff out for Hunter for school. Like
no,
I do everything.
There's certain things you have to be in control of to feel like, otherwise that'll give you huge amount of anxiety.
Yes.
Well, what people with high anxiety do is they micromanage everything. So you can let things go.
Yeah.
And the difference between me and a highly anxious person is that there's lots of things that I know if I don't manage it will probably fall flat on its ass, but I'm not worried about that. Other people, that's a disaster. Now, obviously, with Hunter, like not going to school, I'm not going to call that a disaster, but like you don't want that to happen. That's bad. But like that's catastrophizing, isn't it? If I'm not in control of something, it will go wrong because I'm not controlling it, and that will be a disaster. This will go wrong. That'll go wrong.
What?
That person will hate me.
And then, like, when I got hospitalized with the anxiety, ironically, you and Hunter managed without me, and it was on his actual birthday, and he got picked up from school, and you took him to school the following day, and it's
The life.
people think that the world will end, don't they?
The world will keep spinning. Guess what? When any one of us dies, the world keeps spinning, and everything happens just as it did. So control is completely illusionary to the human being anyway, because there's the only thing you can control is yourself, truly. So even any control over any other person is fleeting, illusionary, temporary, and an expression of that person that's doing the controlling. It's an expression of an insecurity or issue within them that probably needs to be resolved.
Yeah, although, yes, of course, these things being resolved are going to help in life. But, there's nothing wrong with... So, Dan, we were talking about this the other day, actually. So, I'm quite a chaotic person. Dan says I'm like the Tasmanian devil.
We did that on our first live, didn't we?
Spinning around him, yeah. And so he's learned, like, he can walk into the house and... like something that, furniture that normally belongs in the lounge is in the utility. And then he'll go into the kitchen and there'll be, stacks of like 300 books or something. And then, and he has learned. So for him, that's highly stressful. So he's slightly on the spectrum.
I don't like lots of mess.
He likes things to be ordered, and he doesn't like change and all of that. So for him, previously, that would have been an instant like trigger. I would have had to make sure I pre-warned him. Otherwise, I would be facing you in an anxious state, isn't it? But now you've learned that I've got it under control, so to speak. It's not your problem, like, and so you'll walk past it, won't you?
I'm blind to it most of the time now.
Yeah. So Della's anxieties around travelling, especially driving on motorways. So since 2012, I've avoided it.
So do you know what? I don't drive, right? Only trains. So I don't have the issue having to worry. I can drive trains. And this is why I can drive trains and not cars, right? I don't trust other people. Their thought patterns are crazy to me. Like literally 99% of human beings are stark raving mad to me. I don't know if anyone else gets that or that's just me, but that's just my opinion. That's how people come across to me. Highly unpredictable. Stark raving mad. So when if I was driving a car, I literally would be having kittens driving down a road, like a normal road at 30 miles an hour, where anyone could jump out from behind a car. Some random child just decides to spontaneously run in front of the car, or bikes or whatever. There's all kinds of busy things on a little high street, on our local high street or wherever. All kinds of things can go on, right? That's what I'd be worried about. On a motorway, the rules are much more clearer and more adhered to. So the problem is humans aren't very good at following their own rules that they create, but I don't know when people are going to follow the rules or not. And that difference between that means that it makes it really difficult for me to drive. That disparity.
So that's why you've never learned.
That's why that's a genuine fear of mine, is to drive. For that reason, I always think I'll definitely have an accident.
Well, 100%. You've got to face your fears.
Absolutely.
Driving lessons for Christmas?
Well, if you want. I know you don't want me to, though, but I'll play the game if you want. Now, if you go down a motorway, I just think the rules are much clearer, and I would be happiest on a motorway if I was to drive.
Well, this goes deep. So Della said it began with a narcissistic driver.
Oh, well, you've been traumatized, basically. So that trauma could be on anything, or anywhere about anything, and the trauma, whatever that's linked to, will cause you to not want to do that. I mean, that's totally understandable.
I mean, what I would say is you can overcome that if you feel like it holds you back. You could specifically do things longer term to overcome that. But what I would also say on the flip side is if it doesn't, so if you're not bothered about ever traveling on a motorway again, particularly, it'd be nice, but it's okay. Like I have a lot of fear around planes, but anyway, then I would say the areas of your life that it bleeds into, start there. Like, so because you know where the trigger point. So the other anxiety that might be on the outer edge is not real, but you kind of know that that's not the core thing. So you start there maybe and come back. Della says it definitely holds her back.
Well, if she's had a narcissist in her life, that won't be the only trauma she's got. She's going to have multiple trauma events for sure, without a doubt. Not only trauma events, but also she will have amassed a high level of narcissistic stress, let's call it, for a long period of time, and a warping of boundaries. So there's all kinds of like issues that may come into play. I'm saying all those things could be true, because they often are. I'm not saying that you haven't resolved them or had anything to sort of like manage them or anything. But obviously, potentially we had a narcissistic person in our life too, and that obviously had effects on you, didn't it?
Well,
and us.
I'm just thinking, hi Joe, no problem, love. If you want, at the start, we said that if you pop cabbage, moo, any random word in the comments, we've got a notification system now so that you can get notified and get replay links and things like that.
Yes.
So if you want that,
so you won't have to miss one, because a lot of people kept saying that they were missing them because they just forget and because they don't get a notification.
Yeah.
So that's why we did that.
So my dad, so one of the so my dad, narcissist. So this is not as bad as and not as debilitating as not being able to travel on the motorway, but I couldn't serve up food
That isn't scorching hot
without his voice in my head. So if you saw me now, I love cooking. For me, it's like a mindful thing for me.
meditation.
Like, it's something that when I was going for anxiety, it's something that I would turn to, standing and chopping and stirring and everything. But when it comes to serving up, then it would escalate and it would go out of control. And you can see that in the chaos of the kitchen, can't you? Always, yes. Or used to be able to, because my dad had to have everything at lava temperature and would make a negative comment about everything. Nothing could be burnt. So it wasn't allowed to be overcooked. It definitely couldn't be undercooked, and it couldn't be cold. He had exacting specific things. Now, he majority put that narcissism on my mum, but I was present to that. And then obviously I did do some meals for him. And it's only this week, right? I don't know if you noticed the other day, I served the pie up and left it on the plate for quite a long time. And I
didn't notice.
And I made that, you probably weren't watching me. And I made that gravy, remember? And it was like, I said, how long will this be warm for? Because I made it a bit early.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because I'm realizing that
you're trying to unpick all the things that you created, all the programs in your mind that were created by your father for narcissistic purposes. You're trying to delete them all.
Yeah, and realizing that I don't need to be as anxious, but the only way is exposure of doing the things.
Yeah, you've got to just do it, because only how could you possibly unpick something unless you're actually doing it, right? You've got to go through it to do it.
Yeah, so Della would probably need a lot of exposure to positive traveling on the motorway.
Yeah, I mean, if I was in her situation and I wanted to overcome it and I was going to face it and I wanted to drive on the motorway now, but I had to for my work or something, then I would plan out a route that included me jumping on and off a single junction,
short junction. Yeah,
just to go on there, and get off. I know that I'm not on there for long. I've planned my route. I know where I'm going, and I am going on the motorway, so I'm doing the thing. And I know in advance I'm gonna feel certain things, and it's gonna be upsetting or something or whatever she feels when she does that. And then so it's all planned ahead, and I know what's gonna happen ahead. And then I will go and do it, and then get off the motorway the other side and say, okay, how bad was it versus how bad did I think it was gonna be, and look at the difference between those two things.
Yeah.
And then think on that, stew on that, absorb that, and then I'll plan it again. And I'll say to myself, I'm going to do this once a week or whatever until it's resolved. So when I had my train accident last year, I had a fatality. This time last year, exactly a year ago, I had the suicide. Every time I go over that bit of track, which is I go over it whenever I'm at work, probably every day, pretty much every day, at least once. So I have a bit of anxiety, or had a bit of anxiety about that bit of the track. When it was coming up, I had a physical anxiety response to that area of the track. So as it's approaching, I'm thinking about what happened. It's coming up, my heartbeat's racing, I'm sweating, I'm getting hot, and I'm looking for trouble. Basically, I'm at a heightened sense of there's going to be trouble, even though I know it's only happened to me once. I've been a driver since 2008, and it's only happened to me once. Right, highly unlikely. I've only had 2 fatalities in my career. So a fatality in general, let alone in that specific location, highly unlikely. It's not very often that something like that happens, although there was a guy on the track last week. But anyway, um, there's not very often that happens, but still can't help the physiological response. My brain is now resolved, right? After a few times of going over it, my brain was okay with it, fine. And my brain is totally okay with it now. But my body took 8 months, 9 months of going over it before my body stopped reacting to it. It needed 8 months, 9 months of constant reassurance that it's okay on this bit, it's okay on this bit, versus one time because of a traumatic event that it wasn't okay. So sometimes it is persistence of doing something that is okay, versus that one time it wasn't okay, or that imagination that it wasn't going to be okay, I guess, in some people's
And I
case.
think I just think it's so important. And we said it at the beginning, but I come back to it because, maybe it's because of how I suffered in the beginning when it's all started, but that whole, like, you can't think your way out of it. Like, I just think you can't. So you said you logically know that you've been driving since 2008.
Yeah.
But that's irrelevant. And so, but I still think as humans, we try and battle and think like, oh, I know it's silly not going on the motorway. Like, but that's not helpful, is it? I don't think,
No. Well, as I say, it's because of the 2 pathways to anxiety, and there is a physical way. So it can bypass the thoughts. If it's a physical way, it can bypass the thoughts. The amygdala has no thought in it. The amygdala is the oldest part of your brain. It's the reptile part of your brain. It's this very small nugget right in the middle of your brain, and it has no capability of thought. It's purely automatic. All responses that it creates are physical automatic responses. And so if you've got anxiety through physical means, there is no avoidance of it at all. All you can do is cope and manage it.
Go through it. Yeah. What I would do if I was Della is what you said, but I would, and I don't know if this is because I'm female, but I would so there's a playlist on Spotify, which is the 10 known songs that lower anxiety levels.
Oh, okay.
One of them proven scientifically to lower anxiety levels by 65%. So I will provide a link to that Spotify.
And did it help you?
Playlist? Yeah.
Okay.
So when I used to be really bad, I used to go put that on my TV upstairs. That used to be playing on the background on a loop, those 10 songs, to just help regulate my nervous system a bit. Wouldn't pull me out of it. It would stop the escalation.
Do you know what? That makes sense to me because
vibrations.
Yeah, DNA is harmonic, right? You can play sound through it, and it resonates at a frequency. And so if you was to play the right frequency, that's literally a physical way of calming the physical side of anxiety. But also certain melodies are known to be calming just because the vibration must be the perfect wave pattern that counteracts the wave pattern that you're thinking that is negative.
So I think the one that lowers it by 65%, I'm almost sure that that was composed with students for that purpose. So they made sure, like, they knew the things that needed to happen vibrationally, tonally. But for example, Pure Shores is on there by All Saints, the one from the beach. Adele song's on there.
Oh, okay.
And then there's like some classical, it's a real random mix.
But you know what? That in the same way that sound works, so does smell work. The same for the same reason. Smell is a vibration, like sound is, like light is. So certain smells also create calming for the same reason.
So that's what I wrote on my list. So if it was me, I would have a specific Spotify playlist that I knew would help me. I would have oils, essential oils, so I'd make the car smell a certain way.
Lavender, maybe.
That would relax me. So I'm thinking here of being a passenger, not driving.
Yeah, you don't put yourself to sleep while driving.
I would have a weighted blanket because I know that calms the nervous system.
Yeah.
And I would actually probably be in the back of the car with a weighted blanket, possibly with an eye mask even, and possibly the music not through the stereo but through headphones. That might be the first trip.
Yeah.
Like so the way I coped with flying was through headphones and eye mask, and that zoned me out. And now, you know, I'm much better. I also would have a treat at the end, whether that be, you know, something going somewhere to, you know,
like a biscuit.
Yeah, like a dog. Yeah, you know I love a biscuit, love. No, I love a donut. I would have something. I'd have something positive at the end because that will drive a positive reinforcement and build a positive neural pathway in your brain.
Yes.
So I would make sure that there was something really nice at the end, like, you know, a cuddle with a puppy or a donut or
a cuddle with a puppy at the end.
I'd go and yeah, exactly though. Imagine that though. Like someone you love to see waiting for you, you know,
Yes.
set it up. Or a donut, or like I would go to a bookshop.
Yes. I would avoid diabetes also.
So Kelly says, I don't have Spotify, so can you please message me the songs? That's such a good point. Yeah, of course. I'll list the songs out.
Yeah, did you just assume she had Spotify?
Well, Spotify is free.
Oh my god, I can't believe you assume someone's musical capabilities.
Definitely, when I get anxious, I hum vibrations go right through my body and does calm me down.
For the reasons stated before, but also if you do the chant to a baby when they're crying, it normally stops them from crying, the omming.
Oh, I'm going to try that with Elijah because I'm babysitting soon.
Yeah, try the It has to be the right frequency. I think 524 or 528 hertz frequencies are the ones that are the calming.
I'll just get it on the phone and just be like,
if you can type it into YouTube, calming frequencies. Certain frequencies are for that purpose, healing or whatnot.
Are you closing off now?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just do my little bits then.
Yeah, you do your bits then.
So there's some helpful bits there. There's going to be loads more in next episode, but like
we've only touched on the
helpy things. But I didn't want to leave anyone hanging. So Therapy in a Nutshell is another podcast apart from Magic Moments that I would recommend that you go listen to. This helped me. Listening to, I don't really know why. I listen to a lot of stuff, and this is the one that just for me sat with me and just made me
what's it called?
Feel a bit better. Therapy in a Nutshell.
Therapy in a Nutshell podcast, yeah. Right.
Mel Robbins is well known for
Mel,
for anxiety. Now for Mel, for me, she's a bit for me, she's like the kick up the arse like kind of person. So yes. I couldn't cope with Mel Robbins helping me with anxiety when I was like having panic attacks and all of that.
No, you don't want to see your trousers getting booted in when you've got anxiety already.
No. And then I've wrote down journaling again, which kind of comes back to what I said to Laura, which was, you know,
can you imagine the amount of paper she goes through? God.
Like that is, if you want to unpick it, write it down. Like it'll really shine a light on what's happening. Laura did ask a question actually. Did you ever experience your narcissist contacting your friends if you ever created a distance? Now, no, not that specific example as such. But obviously my dad would try and divide and conquer, wouldn't he?
Divide and conquer was a tactic. Is a very popular tactic for narcissists, and he had that tactic. I think I said this on the podcast before. The one time we've ever argued about money was something to do with what he said, and that was at Christmas about 4 or 5 years ago or something. Yeah. He just had this knack of creating division. So we are very conscious. We were very conscious of him, but even despite being on our guard and being conscious of what he's like and prepping each other before we went into a conversation with and stuff like that. Because obviously at Christmas you can't avoid family for you're with them all day long, so it's very hard to stay guarded your entire time and not allow comments to niggle and get in there. And it was towards the end of the day. It was a long old day because anyone who's been around narcissists know how long a day is with a narcissist. And after jumping
It was
through
a
a
bad
million and
day.
one
Yeah.
hoops that he's created out of nothing, you get to the end of the day and you're tired and really you're just waiting for them to go home at this point. And I can't remember what was said, but he managed to get us to argue. And when he did, I looked at his face and he smiled, and that was the happiest he's been all day because he caused a conflict between me and Kizzy. When I say conflict, we just had an argument about finances, which we've never ever done before or since.
No.
Not something we generally have issues with, like in terms of arguing. So that's just their super capabilities. We are going to do a full bloody podcast on narcissism for sure.
That might be a two-parter.
That might be a two-parter. There's bloody so much of it around, isn't there? I think narcissism is becoming a bigger and bigger issue. I see it as a growing problem, and unfortunately, I see more narcissism these days, more prevalence of it amongst younger people than ever before. I don't know all the reasons for it. I have suspicions, but I can't confirm those suspicions. But I just see it a lot more. So I think it's a big issue that is a growing issue, personally.
Yeah. 6 parts minimum.
6-part minimum. Oh, narcissism, God, yeah. Or anyone who's had anything to do with a narcissist would know how complex it is and how much there is to do with it and how much all the effects that a narcissist has on a person, on those around them.
And I just think, this is off topic of anxiety, but
we finished anxiety now. We're just chatting.
yeah.
So anyone who's just here for anxiety, we've finished that now. We're now just chatting.
If you're watching on YouTube, please keep it playing and just mute us.
Start again.
600 hours.
We gotta get to 600 hours. Thanks, any people that are going to do that.
I think that what I would like to say is that a relationship with a narcissist is so complex. Like,
yes.
I loved my dad and love my dad, and that's okay. And it's taken me ages to have some peace with that, because that on the whole there was a lot of stuff that he did that was not nice and was negative, and there's a lot there. But for me, I managed to understand why. I don't know if I'd say the word forgive. Do you think I've forgiven him? I guess I have.
You do a lot of forgiving, you do.
Yeah, I think I have forgiven him. And I understand it. So
you understand where his narcissism came from.
Yeah.
How it was created.
So I see it different. But whatever your feelings are, whether it's absolute anger, hatred, disgust, if there's still love there, like, I think that's the thing, is that, again, that we judge our feelings and think we have to, if we recognize a narcissist, we have to feel a certain way towards that person. And it's not as straightforward as that, because it runs deep, doesn't it?
You can't help but have, narcissists can be very charming, and your dad was a charming man when he was younger.
Yeah.
So it's like complex, because you can love and hate them at the same time.
Yeah.
And obviously that's a father-daughter relationship. But obviously you could be in an actual relationship with a narcissist, and then it's a different thing. And then you can have brother or sister that's a narcissist. That's a different thing. You could have a friend. Well, you could never be a friend with a narcissist, but you can have what you think is a friend.
Yeah.
Really, you don't realize that you're not a friend to a narcissist. You're a battery to a narcissist.
Oh, me and Hannah know that very.
You cannot be a narcissist cannot have a friend. It's impossible. A narcissist can only have batteries, a collection of batteries, and if they need to drain off you, they will, and then they'll leave you to let you charge up, and then they'll come back to you, and they'll only come back to you when they need a charge up. Unfortunately.
So forgiveness is quite easy, but it's the forgetting that I struggle with. Well, don't
forget.
Yeah, no one forgets.
Don't forget. There's no reason to. Why would you forget?
Yeah, it's
like, that's who you are. Who you are today is partly because of that narcissist, and so you've got to be you've got to judge yourself with kindness. As you would want. I'm sure you're a kind person, and if you are kind to other people, I'm sure you can be kind to yourself and judge yourself with kindness. And so, you know, they did the wrong thing. You didn't. They're the narcissist doing the things that they shouldn't be doing, and you are the person who is recovering from that.
And you don't need to forget like the things that they did, because that's been gone. That's in the past. That can't hurt you anymore. What you might need to do is still unpick some of the emotions from that, if that still does hurt you. And the other thing you might need to do is the programming side of it, because they get deep into how we operate. And then my other thing I would say is just, is definitely make sure that you have forgiven. I'll give you an example. So when I was 18, I was sexually assaulted by a taxi driver. So he took me off. It's kind of like a kidnap. Sounds so dramatic, but it's kind of like that.
Well, that's what happened.
That's what happened. I know, but it just sounds really dramatic. So yeah, he kidnapped me, blah, 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 locked the doors, all this stuff. That's what led me to my first depression, PTSD, all of that kind of stuff. Now, I wanted to rip his eyeballs out with my bare fingernails originally. I could sit opposite that man now, and I wouldn't really want to shake his hand, but if I had to, because actually I can sit opposite that man and feel very, very sorry for him, because I've truly forgiven him. And he doesn't deserve my forgiveness. And I think that's what people get hung up on as well. I don't forgive him for him and what he did. I forgive him for me, because I have utter peace over that whole situation. And in fact, and this is difficult for me to say, not because it's difficult for me to say, I don't want to trigger anyone else, and I don't ever want to upset anyone else. And I don't ever want anyone to feel that their own trauma and their own things that have happened to them, especially through a sexual nature, when they're young, is something that you'd be grateful for. But for me personally, I could sit opposite him, and I have a sense of gratitude towards him, because he's the reason that I'm with Dan. He's the reason that, and that triggered a lot of other stuff. So I have a wonderful life. I have a wonderful husband. I have my beautiful Hunter. You're looking around for that wonderful husband.
Yeah.
So I have so much to be grateful for. And yes, there was pain amongst all of that. And he caused me great pain. And I used to always feel like I would have, victim on my forehead. Like, how dare he imprint on me for the rest of my life, is what I felt like.
But he didn't. He imprinted on himself for the rest of his life.
Yeah, he did, and it was hard. It was
like
really
he's
hard.
he's now a person that cannot undo the fact that he kidnapped someone and subjected them to sexual assault. He can't undo that. That happened. That was him. That's who he is, and he can never be released from that knowledge.
No, and his wife and his children. He had children. He had a wife.
Like if I did something like that,
house.
and then Hunter knew that that's what I did, the shame would be so intense. I don't know if I would carry on.
It was in the paper. I mean, he's lucky it wasn't the days of social media, isn't it? Really, But when I was cleaning my nan's house out, I found the article that she kept, which always reminds me, if I say my nan and about the taxi driver, it always reminds me of the picnic she bought out in the middle of the courthouse.
Oh yeah, she had this little handbag like that, right? But she pulled out an entire platter pyramid of ham sandwiches, like perfect. It was like a TARDIS bag, wasn't it? It just and it was perfectly made in a perfect triangle. None of the bread moved. Nans.
We could talk about it and laugh about it, and that. Because he's the reason I got involved with Unique, because of they're linked with Sapria, which is all about childhood sexual abuse, and it's affected my whole life,
but in a positive way.
Yeah, ultimately, there was negatives and there was pain, but ultimately positive. So I would think about, it's like my dad. There's a lot of negatives, there's a lot of bad things, but there's other things that perhaps I can take from it, and I do take from it that were good and are good. So that's another, and that's difficult to do, but if you can.
Life throws a lot of hurdles at you, and all you can do is jump over them, because if you don't, you're just going to stand in front of it for the rest of your life. And unfortunately, a lot of people get to their hurdles, and for whatever reason, they can't find the strength or whatever to jump over it. They would rather stay where they are, or they don't feel that they can go any further, and they just stay at that point for the rest of their life. And you have to choose to jump over the next hurdle. You have to, otherwise you're never going to progress or move on. So that is just my opinion, anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, shall we free the people and allow them to go back to their
Free.
lives?
You're free. Yeah.
Because we've been on an hour and a half, and I just feel guilty of an hour's fine, an hour 15's all right, and then an hour and a half I get a bit.
We're basically a film.
Yeah, like Dan and Kiz the movie.
Oh, Della says you two are amazing.
Thank you,
darling. So are you. Yeah, we'll go now because I've got a long day tomorrow. Very long day. So Della, are you at the cricket club tomorrow? I might see Della tomorrow.
Oh,
I don't know.
Della, Ella, A.
How long has that been in your head?
The whole time.
Yeah.
From the very beginning.
Yeah, he has a form of Tourette's where it's not swearing or anything like that, but if he gets something in his head,
I have to say it.
If he knows it's inappropriate, he has to come out.
It doesn't.
And
Yes,
say
I just apologise in advance to all people. If your name rhymes with something, I will have to rhyme it, get it out, and then it's gone. It's into the ether. I'm gone.
Oh, Della's not there. That's a shame. Could have had a hug. Right. Okay. We're going to love you and leave you. We'll put on our lovely little end music. And yeah.
Don't forget to sign up for the list if you want it. Check out our links. Buy me a beer.
Oh, and Della says she's going to listen. She's going to have us on the background tomorrow.
Yes.
Come on, 600 hours.
600
right,
hours.
guys,
There we go.
have an amazing week. Mwah.
Bye-bye.
See you soon.